Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Lunch and Learn for January here at the Harmon Museum. I'm John Zimkus, the Education Director and Historian here. Thank you for coming in this very, very cold day. Some things which are happening at the museum. We're going to have a Music at the Museum series beginning in February with the McLean Celtic Evening. February 13th, March 13th, the Gibson Quartet, April 10th, Rabbit Hash String Band. I believe that's from Rabbit Hash, Kentucky. There's a famous general store there. Mark Morton Bagpipes on May 8th, and then on June 12th, Jay Mills at the grand piano. That's our Jay Mills is one of the most gifted musicians you will find in Warren County. I've known Jay for over 50 years. He actually played at my wife and my wedding almost 51 years ago. And being a 6-year-old at the piano, he was fantastic. No, he wasn't 6. Okay. As far as Lunch and Learns go, we do have coming up on February 18th, 4 days after Valentine's Day decorations. Our very, very good friend, Linda Martin, over there in her striped sweater, is going to share with her fan. She has collections on Christmas, Easter, Halloween, and now Valentine's Day. And I don't know if there's any Arbor Day or 4th of July or anything like that coming. But she will share her collections going back over the decades of Valentine decorations. On March 18th, Frank Duveneck, the Greatest Brush, a brief look at his life and loves. Frank Duveneck was perhaps the most famous artist to come out of the Cincinnati area. Many of the fine artists learned at his side, and we're going to take a look at his artwork, his influence. Come April 16th, Aviation, Myths, Heroes, and Oddballs. Jim Newport, our facility manager, basically our handyman. If it's broken, he fixes it. If we need it, he builds it. But he's going to talk about myths of aviation, heroes and oddballs. It's something very worthwhile. He's also one of our resident experts on the Armstrong Gallery of Flight over there. May, I'm still working on trying to get our speaker who was scheduled for Veterans Day to come there. In June, I will have the pleasure of being your speaker following the tracks of the Underground Railroad in Warren County. Warren County was part of the Underground Railroad. Ohio was the most important state in the Underground Railroad. And we're going to take a look. This is just a day away from Juneteenth, but we will take a look at some of the legends, some of the myths, and some of the facts which we have been able to uncover about the Warren County as we follow their tracks through our area. So we have a lot of good things coming. Hopefully you can come join us, enjoy your meal, and we'll have our program in a little bit. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, once again to the Harmon Museum's Lunch and Learn for January. Our speaker today is no stranger to Lunch and Learn, or to anybody who likes history in Warren County. Fred and I were talking before we began recording how we think this is the 14th time that he has been here. He always has a big following. His expertise on the Golden Lamb is second to none. This talk is called 3 Centuries of the Golden Lamb 2.0. He used a title once before, but like any good historian, you don't stop with your research. It continues. You find new old things to talk about. His collection on Golden Lamb memorabilia has gone on for over 50 years. and he's still finding new things. Without further ado, I'm proud to introduce Fred Compton.
Oh, thank you. Now I ask the same question every year before we start. Can you hear me? No. Higher? Can you hear me now? Too well? How is it now? Are you good? Okay. Well, I wanted to thank John for that nice introduction, and as he said, this is the 14th time I've been here. I remember we started this, well, it had to have been early 2000s, right after the Golden Lamb book was published. And Vicki Ben Harlingen, who was the director, called me up and said, hey, we're going to start this thing called Lunch and Learn, but we're going to do it at night. I said, okay. She said, I can't pay you a lot of money. We're trying to get people together. And this was, like I say, about 2010, 2011. And John took it over, and I wanted to take this opportunity to thank John for inviting me down here 14 times. And it's a difficult thing, getting, 10 speakers? 10 speakers a year, because they cut off in the summertime. And so I think it's enjoyable, and it's certainly well attended every year. It's something people look forward to. So thank you, John, for inviting me. Now, yeah. One more thing. Swipe left. Yes. Left.
Yeah. Go to the left. Yes.
So from right to left. This new technology, a lot of it's beyond me. I mean, I'm so old, I use my phone as a phone. I don't do anything else. Despite what the title says, I'm not going to talk a lot about the Golden Lamb. We're going to talk about the hotel, because that's the way it was referred to when I came to work there in November of '66. It was a hotel. And I mentioned in the Golden Lamb book, I said, if you ever run across somebody who refers to it as the hotel, talk to them. They've been around town for a while. They know what's going on. If you ever find somebody who referred to it as the hotel, accent on the first syllable, they've really been around. They know what's happening. But it was the hotel. And oh, there it is. This is a copy of a newspaper that we did yearly. Starting in 1973, I was looking through them last night. 1973 through 1999, we did them in January of every year. And 1992, I was fortunate enough to get an interview with Bob Jones, who was still alive at that time, about the Golden Lamb. And one of the things he was most proud of was the fact that the Golden Lamb was one of, if not the last surviving county seat hotel. Wasn't a boarding house, wasn't a rooming house, it was an actual hotel. And he was very proud of that fact. I'm sure there are probably a couple still around somewhere in the state, but he was very proud of the fact that it was a hotel that had survived. I asked him, I said, what do you remember about the Golden Lamb in 1928 when you came here? And I remember he kind of smiled and he said, there was a bare 40-watt light bulb hanging down in every room and cracked plaster everywhere you looked. The place had kind of been run down, and in fact, when I was working at the Golden Lamb, people would ask me what it was like. And they always hated it when I said this. But I said, well, when Bob took it over, it was just kind of a little run-down town hotel. And actually, it's more like a boarding house. A lot of long-term residents, and we'll talk about that later. But we're going to talk about the hotel. We're also going to talk about some terms you may never have heard before in reference to the hotel. Coffee shop. Coffee shop. We're going to talk about the conference room. These are terms that even when I was there full-time in the 70s, nobody knew what that meant, but they were still used in the 60s. One of the biggest group of collections that I've got are postcards. And I've got a whole book full over here. By all means, feel free to, when we finish, take a look. This is, I think, the earliest card that I've got, probably pre-1900. The old bandstand, you can see, you look for clues when you try and date these cards. The old bandstand right there at the corner of Mulberry and Broadway. Got streetcars, no automobiles. But when I saw this card, I saw something I'd never seen before. And what I saw, going the wrong way, was this, Lebanon House. I had never seen that in any photograph or any card that I had collected about the Golden Lamb. And that's the way it was referred to throughout the years. It was the Lebanon Hotel or the Lebanon House. Here's one, and this is an early 1900s view of Broadway. It is 20th century, but there are a couple of cars there. And a good shot of Broadway, and everybody, when they photograph the hotel, is like they're standing over in the corner of Christmas Tree Park and looking across the street. 1920s, the only hotel, and you all know the only Furman story. But what's interested me more about this card is the back. It was a postcard, but overprinted with a map. And again, whenever you get these cards, if it hasn't been postally used, if you got a postmark, you're home free. But if it has been postally used, you start looking for clues. Well, here's one. Lebanon's leading hotel. The only. 50 rooms. Had 50 rooms at the hotel at this point, which is probably, late teens, early 20s. When I came to work there in 66, had 23 rooms left that we rented. I think you're down now to what?
17.
17. They lost 6 along the way. We had 23 rooms, and even the dining rooms, when I came to work there in 66, still had the numbers on the door. The second floor. The Clay room, number 34. The Lanningham room, number 35. Harrison room was 37. The Corwin room was 42. And the names were on the door. Then the other 8, we can only figure encompassed the president's room, where the president's room is now. Hot and cold running water. Rooms with bath, not all of them. But what's fascinating to me about this one, I'll learn this by the middle of the speech. Well, Shaker Village. It lists Union Village in their advertising, and it has a lot of political entities on there that are long gone. Bethany, Maud's, Foster's, Red Lion, Blue Ball. By the way, there was a Red Lion Tavern and a Blue Ball Tavern, in case you didn't know that. But apparently, the Shaker Village was enough of a landmark that they included it in their advertising. This is an interesting postcard. And we're talking, my longtime friend, Mike Faulkner, and I, notice I said long time, I didn't say old. We're talking about postcards that you'll see from time to time. This is an interesting card for 2 reasons. Number one, I've got to believe it was part of a series. I can't believe that Mr. Jones would have gotten just a postcard printed up for Charles Dickens and nobody else. And certainly, Dickens was the most popular guest the Golden Lamb ever had. There were more questions asked, more articles written about Dickens than anybody else. But with all the people he had to choose from, You'd think they would have done more than one. But what's interesting to me about this card, when you look at the back, nothing. No phone number, no address, no sales pitch, come to the Golden Lamb. It's just blank. So why? Why print up a postcard with just a picture on the front and no advertising on the back? No idea. No idea. This is another early card that we think is probably pre-1900. John and I were trying to date it one day with doing the trolley tracks and the light through the middle of the street. We think it's at least early 1900. It might be even prior to. Again, it wasn't postally used, so there's nothing on the back. This is an interesting card. People often ask, where do you get this stuff? Where do you find it? And you're going to find it where you find it. I got this card off a website in France. Lots of postcard sites out there. This one is a site called delcamp.net, and they sell postcards, they sell currency, they sell prints. But this one was from 1918. It wasn't postally used, but there was a message written on the back, and it's dated France 1918. Which would have been about right when you look at the age of the cars and the shape of the building. And we're going to talk a little more about this one later. This is one of the last postcards that I've gotten, and I only got it about 6 weeks ago. When I look at these cards, I'm looking at the fronts. Do I have it? Don't I have it? Is this one in better shape than what mine is? And I saw this card, and it's not much of a card. I mean, you see a little bit of the Golden Lamb over there on the left-hand side, but not too much of it. But this card got me started on doing something new after all the collecting that I've done. I've started to look at the back of the cards now. As I said, if you have a card and it's postally used, no problem dating it, because you got a postmark on it that tells you when it was sent. And so I've started looking at the backs of all these cards now when I see new ones that come up. And I saw this one, and this one has been postally used, 1943. So what, 57, over almost 100, well, not quite 100 years ago. And as a visitor to Lebanon, and despite all the great things that I've said about this town and what's going on, this guy was not real happy with his visit to Lebanon, Ohio. Hello, folks. Here I am in this part of the country. This is some burg, only about 4,000 population, and you can't get anything here. They have one movie show, and they close it on Tuesday and Wednesday. About 25 miles from Cincinnati, so I'll be seeing soon. So Mr. Chaco wasn't too happy with his visit to our little town. This is kind of a wonky picture of the lobby. Best my cell phone could do. But that's kind of the way it looks today. This is another postcard. This is how it looked when I came to work here. The biggest thing I remember was that wallpaper. Everybody asked about that wallpaper. Louis Bowen, Americana, number 951, Weeping Willow. And the paint was Sherwin-Williams Center Family Blue. The one thing I remember was whenever we repainted, it would take like almost 36 hours for it to dry because there was so much pigment in it. That's how it was in '66 when I came to work there. I'll get the hang of this pretty soon. There's what it looked like prior to that. Every time I see that photograph, I always think to myself, Mr. and Mrs. Jones were not afraid of color. They liked things bright with the orange walls and the kind of almost light blue colored trim. So we saw it in the 60s when I came there. This was probably 1950s. I'm sure there's nobody in this room who remembers when it looked like that. That's probably early 1950s. And again, you can tell by kind of a date, popcorn strings on the tree, not much in the way of decorating. Set up for a Christmas celebration. Those two pistols that are hanging on the wall that I guess are still up there. There's a Dickens room, as it looks today, after a major renovation, what, 7 years ago.
2018.
Yeah, 7 years ago, major renovation. That's what it looked like when I came to work there. And again, this is another postcard. Okay, how do you date it? Well, you start looking for clues. And the first clue I saw were these chairs right here. Those cane seat, round back chairs, when I came to work there in '66, were being used in the Black Horse Tavern. So obviously, picture was taken prior to 1964, because the tavern was built in '64. So, that's what it looked like when I came to work there. But I am certain there's nobody in this room who can remember what it looked like that. That's probably 1930s, 40s. Soda fountain in there. Those tables that you see along the side there, we were still using those in the 70s. And we're going to talk about that. But again, probably 1940s, 1950s. Which brings us to this. This is a fan. And I got it from a local family, the McClure family. There was a guy around town, and some of you may remember him, Scott McClure. Remember Scott? He was what, Mike, like 125 when he passed away. He was an old guy. But they were cleaning out his house, and they found this. And it's a fan. Opens up like this for time when he didn't have air conditioning. And they said to me, would you like to have it? I said, well, I'd love to have it. Love to have it. So they gave it to me. That's the back. Or that's the front, I guess. There's the back. The Lebanon House, again, Lebanon House. No Golden Lamb. Lebanon House. The Maryland summer menus. Always cool and comfortable. Lebanon, Ohio. In Maryland. Never heard of Maryland before. Who was Maryland? Put it away. Didn't think anything about it. And then, I don't know, a year or two later, good friend of the Golden Lamb and longtime friend of the Warren County History Center, Jenny Kuntz, Jenny Cropper Kuntz, is coming into work one afternoon, and she sees me and she says, hey, says, stop by my table, somebody I'd like you to meet. So I checked in, let them know I was there. Came up to her table, and she introduced me to a woman named Laura Farbach. And Laura, at that time, I would say late 70s, early 80s. And Jenny said, Laura lived and worked at the Golden Lamb in the 30s, in the 20s, in the late 20s. Hey, I want to talk to her. So we sat down and started to chat. And Laura told me a few things that I already knew, that when Bob Jones bought the Golden Lamb, there was no restaurant. And he said, my mom had a restaurant on Mulberry Street. And he did his best, and he finally talked her into moving her restaurant from Mulberry Street down to Golden Lamb, where the Dickens room is now. I said, oh, great. I said, what was your mom's name? Well, her name was Marilyn Keogh. The light bulb goes off over my head, and I tell her about this. And she, oh, yeah, I remember those. I remember those, and we had those because there was very little, if any, air conditioning in the dining rooms. But she starts telling me all these stories about the Golden Lamb in the 20s and early 30s. I don't know, some of you may remember, before they redid the windows in front, right beside the front door, where you walk in, there was another door that led you into the Dickens room. We used it as a handicap entrance because there were no steps to get in. When the Maryland moved in, Mr. Jones had that door put in because, as Laura Farbach said, Mr. Jones didn't want the townspeople mixing with the hotel guests, you know. Some of you may remember, about halfway on the south wall that faces, that's the lobby, there used to be a cutout in that wall. We had a fake wine rack in there, but if you took that fake wine rack out, you could see through to the lobby. That was the cashier stand for the Maryland. Because again, Mr. Jones did not want the riffraff people from Lebanon mixing with the hotel guests. And in fact, when I came to work there in '66, there were two very heavy doors right on lobby level. You know, if you go into the Dickens room now, you walk down 2 steps to get in there. Well, there were 2 doors that they would close to block off the dining room from the rest of the hotel. And so we chatted for about 20 minutes, and they had finished their lunch. I had to get to work. So I said goodbye to Laura. Excuse me. A couple months later, I ran into Jenny. I said, we got to get Laura Farbach back up here. I want to bring my notebooks, I want to bring my tape recorder, we're going to take her to lunch, and I want to hear everything she has to say. And Jenny got this kind of strange look on her face. Shook her head and said, no. About a month after you talked to her, she had a stroke. Went in the hospital and never came back out. So let that be a lesson to any of you historians. If you find somebody who's got the knowledge, don't put it off. Talk to them. Talk to them. Talk about food. Here is the earliest Golden Lamb menu that I have, 1938. And pretty hefty menu for a small town hotel. Hors d'oeuvres, spelled wrong. Oyster cocktails. Yeah, in the middle of fresh oysters in the middle of the Midwest. Sirloin steak, frog legs, filet mignon, $1.35. And all these menus, the prices are just a hoot. Hot rolls, preserves, 3 different desserts. But that's the earliest one that I have. We'll move up. This is the Golden Lamb menu that I remember when I came to work there in '66. Big, long menu. And again, this one did not have a date on it, but you can tell our Black Horse Tavern is open Tuesday through Saturday from noon until 9. That means it had to be after 1964, because the tavern didn't come along until '64. But ice fruit cocktail, turkey with dressing, choice of 2 vegetables, $3.55. Or if you wanted to skip the appetizer, you can get it for $2.90. Yeah. Go to another one. Here was one, and you see a lot of these menus have those brown blotches on the top. That's because they change menus every day, and we put them in with rubber cement. And at the end of the day, pull the old menu out, move the new menu in. Here was the expensive stuff. Yeah, here was the expensive stuff. Crispy fried seafood combination, fried fish fillet, French fried scallops, jumbo Gulf shrimp, fried Chesapeake oysters. See a theme going on there, a lot of fried stuff. Shoestring potatoes, coleslaw, $5. $5. Lamb chops, $5.75. That also included bread rolls and a salad. I swear I'll get used to this by the end of the. Here's a very early one. This is a lunch menu, 61. So what, 64 years ago. Again, just the size of the sheer number of entrees that they did. But again, pretty fancy for a country inn. Bouillabaisse, never had that on. Fried chicken, a jelly omelet. No idea in the world what that was. Well, it was $1.25, whatever it was. But just the sheer number of entrees on there. Breakfast at lunch, golden brown waffle with country sausage. Yeah, and maple syrup. Lobster salad. And they were all over the board at that time. But the most expensive entree was $3.50. That was a filet mignon. Now this was, and have some people here at the front table will remember these kind of menus. This is what we switched over to starting about 1970 when the management changed hands. And the Commissar family came in, and as I say, there are menu covers over there on the table. You'll see that we did a lot with brown on brown and brown on gold. But again, the prices are such a hoot. You can tell this was 70s, when things were a little looser, because look what they're saying above today's luncheons. Enjoy luncheon stimulation of a Bloody Mary or a screwdriver. Yeah. Pot roast, ham rolls. Love those ham rolls. Those were so good. And the bottom entree is only $1.70. Crispy fried fish fillet. I remember everybody always tried to sneak those for lunch. They loved crispy fried. Coffee, 20 cents. 20 cents. People talk about how fast food restaurants are in trouble. And you see it. Everybody, Wendy's, Burger King, all of them have got their value menus now because they got hurt during the period of inflation for the last 4 years. And of course, nothing new. I mean, McDonald's did it in 2002 when they started their dollar menu. You get a chicken sandwich for $1, hamburger for $1. It's unheard of. No one. There's a menu from the Golden Lamb, 1961, fresh ground hamburger sandwich with French fried potatoes, sliced tomatoes and relishes. $1. $1, and I will tell you, even when I was there in the middle 60s, there was a very prominent businessman here in town, I'm not going to give you his name, who was there, and rather large guy, who was there probably 4 days a week for 11 o'clock when we opened up to have that meal. And then supposedly I was told after he did that, he went home and had lunch. Now, this is, and it's tough to read, but you can read it, a desk diary, 1938. And I was getting these in the 70s when I was working there. And basically, it's just what it says it is. About 400 ruled pages that were blank, and you could make notes, write down recipes. I mean, the whole book was liberally interspersed with ads for the supplier's product. That's who gave them to you. But it was a cheap giveaway, kind of like a calendar at Christmas. And most of them wound up in the trash. Nobody ever used them. Well, 1938, somebody did. And this is a record, I think, of all of the private parties at the Golden Lamb in the year 1938. And again, the prices are just a hoot. Any Service Club members in the audience that go to the 34 Rotarians luncheon, assorted cold plate, potato salad, hot rolls, preserves, raspberry pie, and choice of drink. 60 cents. 60 cents. I think you charge more than that now, all right? Yeah, a little bit. 50 women in the conference room, 2 to 5. Punch, vanilla wafers, 20 cents. 20 cents. Conference room. Like the coffee shop, one of those that kind of fell by the wayside. Well, there was a conference room, what is now the Corwin dining room. Decorated a little differently, again, with that florid, probably 50s wallpaper. But that was the conference room at the Golden Lamb. Now, we saw 20 cents for the ladies' conference. We saw 60 cents for Rotary. But don't get the idea that this is the home of cheap meals. Oh, no. You want an expensive meal? This was December 20th. I'm assuming a Christmas party. Mrs. Rich, 6:45, hors d'oeuvres, tomato juice, 7 tomato juice, 1 consommé, even dietary restrictions even then. Roast turkey with dressing, cranberry sauce, stuffed baked potato, carrot rings filled with fresh buttered peas. A lot of carrot rings in 1938, and I don't know what they were. Corn sticks and biscuits, preserves, salad, peppermint stick ice cream, pass the hot fudge sauce, $1.25. $1.25. Again, it's amazing. The price of documents. Well, I mentioned earlier that when Mr. Jones took it over, it was almost like a boarding house, a lot of long-term residents. Well, there's a receipt dated 1930, just shortly after we took over, for room rent for Miss Mary Runyon, $1.50. Now, was that for a day? For a week? Could have been for a week. 1930, you don't know. But again, the Lebanon House. No mention of the Golden Lamb. It was a hotel. Okay, 1930, 95 years ago. We can go back further than that. I found this letter right before we did the Lebanon book in 2011. Homestead Hotel, and the only hotel in Lebanon, Ohio. The only hotel, of course, you've all seen that famous picture when it was owned by Only Furman. Well, apparently, the same person who managed the Only also managed the Homestead Hotel in Kings Mills. And again, this is dated 1917, and it's just a generic letter. Yeah, pay this guy this amount of money. You know, we owe it to him. And this one's dated 1917. So now we're back, what, 140 years? 147 years? Or, we go back further than that? Yes, we can. Well, and there was the Homestead Hotel. Beautiful place, built by the King Powder Company for use by their employees and by people visiting, doing business with the King Powder Company. It stood at the corner of Church and Maple in Kings Mills. You go to the corner of Church and Maple right now in Kings Mills, and you see tract houses that were built probably in the 60s. So unfortunately, this beautiful old building was gone. So we were in 1917, right? Can we go back? Sure. Lebanon House Livery Stable, 1894. Now, I was always told that the Lebanon House Livery Stable, the location for it, was off the Golden Lamb parking lot, basically right outside the door, the outside door of the gift shop where you go down the steps. I was showing this to John, he said, no, no, no. The Black Horse Livery Stable was north, right? Kind of in the area where William and Mary is now, right off the alley.
No, I think you're right the first time.
Really?
Yeah, it was located right next to Gazebo Park.
Yeah?
So east of the alley.
Right, okay, yeah.
Between Gazebo Park and the alley.
Gosh. And here I was ready to give you this big compliment saying, if John said that's where it was, that's where it was. Okay, so it was right out, shooting right outside for where the current gift shop door is now. And again, this is just some generic letter, hey, I got your horse, I raced your horse. But the Lebanon House Livery, Food, and Sales Stable, 1894. What's interesting to me about, I mean, not the fact that it's a 131-year-old letter, but telephone number 17. In 1894, there was commercial telephone service in Lebanon, Ohio. I had no idea it would go back that far, but it did. I want to go back further than that? Sure. This is a letter, and again, look at the top. Lebanon House, leading hotel in the city. This Golden Lamb Country Inn thing didn't come along until the 70s when the management changed hands. And we started promoting Golden Lamb as a rustic country inn. But anyway, the Lebanon House, the leading hotel in the city, 1882. And this is a letter from some poor guy, and he's stuck in Lebanon and he's broke. And he's writing a letter. He needs $3 to get tomorrow. And he's writing a letter to somebody to try and get them to send him $3. And it's kind of sad because he's detailing all of his expenses and what he's had to spend and how it just keeps getting smaller and smaller. I guess he got out, I don't know. 1882. So now we're, what, 1982, 143 years? Can we go back further than that? Yes, I can. This is just an envelope. 1881, it's a year earlier. I wish I had the letter or whatever it was inside. But again, Lebanon House. No Golden Lamb. The leading hotel in the city. And that's what they were so proud of, is that it was a hotel. And, you know, at that time, not a boarding house, not a country inn. They saw it as a hotel, which is a very prestigious thing to have. These last things are just things that don't fit anyplace else. This is a Golden Lamb bath towel. And Mr. Jones is very big on logoing stuff, putting the Golden Lamb's name on it. And anytime, I can tell you, anytime you put your name on something, it's going to walk out the door. And I found this at a local garage sale. And this was, gosh, back in the 70s. And there was a guy named Bob Sims who had worked at the Golden Lamb for many, many years. In fact, his cousin was Norman Sims, the chef who was there for so many years and who now has his own room on the 4th floor of the Golden Lamb. And I showed it to Bob, and he kind of laughed. He said, oh, yeah. He said, those lasted about 6 months in 1959. And he said everybody just stole them. So when they went back to just using regular towels. We got into logo stuff too. So we got a bunch of glasses over here. Please take a look. But cocktail glasses. And we kind of used the glasses as a pass-through. It was an incentive to buy the drink. If the drink was $2.50, you could buy the drink and the glass for $3.50 and take the glass home with you. But we did a few there. Those we did in December, 1 year. We used them to sell wassail and our Smoking Bishop, 2 hot cocktails. Couldn't keep them on the shelf. And midway through the month, we just said, forget it. We're not going to order anymore. I fortunately scored 6 before they got out. Not a good picture of a Golden Lamb ashtray. And there were several types that we used over the years. And again, anything with your name on it's going to walk out the door. This, one of the earliest pieces of Golden Lamb memorabilia I ever got. And it's one of my favorites. And there's a great story behind it. 1967, we had a new general manager, a guy named Bruce Cork. And Bruce was a young guy, very, very forward thinking. He was at the Golden Lamb for a few years. Went to work Kings Island for a while, and then wound up at a great restaurant up in Lancaster, Ohio, called Shaw's. Married a local girl, Nancy Prime. But anyway, Bruce was always full of ideas. And at that time, and I'm sure a lot of you will remember this, we still had racing up the old fairgrounds, right? Still had racing. And I think they raced Tuesday through Saturday. I think there was dark on Sunday and Monday. And we were packed. I mean, we were packed from like 5 to about 7 o'clock because people wanted to have dinner, get up to the track, they could bet the daily double when they went off 7:30. So Bruce had the idea, well, hey, if we've got all these people here anyway, let's see if we can give them a more expensive meal. They're out obviously for an evening's entertainment. Maybe they'll spend a little more money. So he came up with this thing called parimutuel steaks. Get it? S-T-E-A-K-S, S-T-A-K-E-S. And what it was the original black horse salad, a smaller strip sirloin. We were using 12 ounces, we'd give them a 10. Texas French fries, just big wedge cut fries. And then there was this. And you could never get away with this today. In that picture, if you ordered the meal, was either a double martini or a double Manhattan. And when you ordered it, the server would bring the pitcher out, pour your first drink, set the pitcher on the table. You could pour your second drink at your leisure. End of the meal, we'd wash the pitcher out, take it home with you. Souvenir. Great idea. Well, the only problem with it was, if a meal at the Golden Lamb at that time was, I don't know, say an average meal was $3.50, this meal clocked in at like $7 or $8 because you had to cover the cost of the meal, cover the cost of the drink, cover the cost of the pitcher. And we rolled this thing out and it bombed. I mean, nobody bought it. Nobody. We wound up selling these things in the gift shop, filling them with candy and selling them in the lobby. That's where I got this one. Because we found out people going to the racetrack didn't want a more expensive meal. They were saving their money for the racetrack. So nobody bought it. But one of the reasons that this is so important to me is I think it might have been the first piece technically that I got, even though I wasn't a collector then because I got it in like 1967. But the first piece that I got. But also, after 50 years, all the websites I go to, all the local garage sales, yard sales, I've never seen another one. Never seen one. And I don't know how many he did. When I was working with Libby in the 70s, in the 80s, if you want a custom item like this, 3 dozen to a case, 10 case minimum. So he had 360. I don't know how many Bruce had printed up. And there were 2 different types. There was this, and there was same design, but it was an etched glass logo that Libby did with the chemical. But I have never seen another one. Honey Festival, Maryland. Remember the Honey Festival? Wonderful, wonderful Honey Festival. We got involved, yeah. Honey Festival cocktail picks, or swizzle sticks, I should say. That's one of those things I do not look back upon the Honey Festival with any warm feelings. Lebanon House Barbershop. There was a barbershop in the hotel, in the basement. And in fact, Dee Dee Bailey and I lived in that barbershop for many, many years, and she still does. But if you walk up to the hotel, of course, right before you get to the front door, you see that set of steps that goes down the basement level. That's how you got into the barbershop. These next two are kind of odd, and I'll tell you the story real quick. Got a call one day to hide a lunch, and nobody ever called me at 9 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We were slow. They always call it to hide a lunch. And I picked up the phone. I said, "Yeah." I said, "Hello." I said, "Fred?" I said, "Yeah." This is Skip Merton. Now, Skip Merton was the president and general manager of the Merton Printing Company in Cincinnati. And Merton did all of our big stuff. They did the Christmas cards. They did our menu covers. A fine art printer. And Skip was my contact. And Skip was a very low-key guy, kind of spoke in a monotone, never got excited about anything. And he said, "Did you know somebody had written a book about the Golden Lamb?" I said, "Yeah." I said, Hazel Phillips, a local historian, wrote it. Came out in 1957. So we buy a couple thousand copies every 5 years and sell them in the gift shop, put them in the hotel rooms. And Skip said, and it's printed by Oxford Press. I said, "Yeah." I said, "Oxford Press had it when we came here, and we just figured it's easier to leave it with them. And why are you asking me all this?" He said, "Well, I'm up here in Oxford at an auction. We're looking to buy some storage units for our plant in Cincinnati, and I opened this locker, and here are all these original plates for your book, the Golden Lamb book." And he said, "Do you want me to buy them?" I said, "Yeah, I want you to buy them. We don't buy them. We don't have a book." So he paid like $500 for the locker and its contents, brought it back to Cincinnati, and they started printing our book. And about, I don't know, a year afterwards, I was down at their office one day, probably there to pick up Christmas brochures, because they always ran late. And he hands me this box, and he says, "We can't use these. Do you want them?" And what they were the original wood block prints for the photographs in Hazel's book. This is that famous Howe's History of Ohio illustration that's in there, and there's the reverse block. There's, again, that 1920s view of the Golden Lamb, and there's the reverse block. And I took a couple, Jack Reynolds took a couple, I think the chef got a couple. But just souvenirs of a bygone age. This is an interesting piece of advertising, and I was showing this to John. We were trying to figure out why they did it the way they did it. Golden Lamb, 1815, Shaker Village Gift Shop. There's our new Black Horse Tavern. Okay, so that means 64, maybe 65. Party rooms, meeting rooms. But here's the funny part. See the rooms where 6 presidents slept. Now, by the time I got there in '66, they were advertising 10 United States presidents, but this says 6. And John and I were trying to figure out, why would they just advertise 6? Still can't figure it out. He says, when he does his history tour up there on Wednesday nights? Yeah. Wednesday nights. He said people are always asking him, "Do you know which rooms they actually slept in?" And of course, we have no idea. But the fact that they only listed 6 United States presidents and newly expanded to seat 600 guests. Well, they had to have included the tavern in that, the downstairs tavern in that, because when we were there, 70 to, 2001 when I left, and we used every square scrap of space and seating, we could do like 420. So they must have been including the downstairs tavern in their count. This is a picture that did not scan very well. I've got it. It came to me from the Western Star. But 1803, Golden Lamb, and it's symbol of one of my favorite Golden Lamb stories. I was working. It was 1975, I believe, 75. Working one evening, and Server comes up to me and she says, people up in the Villanny, she's working private parties, people up in the Villanningham room would like to see you. They want to see the manager. And of course, start with the normal questions. Food okay? Oh, they love the food, ate everything. Service okay? Oh yeah, they even tipped me more than what was on the check. They seemed very happy. I said, okay. So I go upstairs into the Lanningham room, and there sat about 7 or 8 people, about my age, maybe a few years older. Come to find out, they're from Kings Island. And the gentleman, the young guy who was speaking for the group, was saying they were going to do a new ride, Little Miami Kings Island Railroad, which is still there today. And they were going to highlight parts of Southern Ohio history. And they wanted to include they were going to include the Golden Lamb. And I thought, well, boy, this is great. You know, always have 1 million people riding by our namesake every day. And I said to him, I said, well, what's it going to look like? I said, nobody knows what the Golden Lamb looked like, in 1803. And they brought out some drawing that they were going to do. And I said, well, tell me. I said, is it going to be like full size? It can't be full size. 3/4 size? Is it going to be half scale? The young man smiled and kind of chuckled. And he said, well, to tell you the truth, it's 95% done, and the ride opens in 2 weeks. We thought we'd better come over and ask you if we could use your name. And of course we did. And the name was only on there for a couple of years. And then they changed it, and it's now the Red Wing or the Blue Robin or something, but they took the Golden Lamb's name off of it. This is a reminder of my absolute favorite Golden Lamb story. And I've told the story a couple of times, but this is a newspaper clipping from Dayton, 1935, 36, about the remodeling of the Golden Lamb. And again, you can see the balcony has been put on, and they probably redid the bricks. And a lady named Richters, who I had come to know at the hotel, she said, I found this in my parents' attic. It was from a scrapbook of important newspaper clippings in 1936. Would you like it? I said, oh, I'd love to have it. Love to have it. So she sent it to me. Now, it's nothing really unique. Newspapers printed by the thousands. I'm sure there are lots of other people who may have a clipping just like this. Nothing really all that valuable. But it reminds me of the story, and it was after the bicentennial, we'll say 1980. I'm coming back from the bank one day, and I look down, and here are these little piles of sawdust beside the pillars that are holding up the 4-story balcony. I'm thinking, oh boy, termites. So we called our pest control guy, Ray Powell. Ray comes down, he gets down his hands and knees and looks at the sawdust up on a ladder, pries some boards back, and he's shining his flashlight around at a steel rod, was thumping on the ceiling of the ground floor looking for soft spots. After about 15, 20 minutes, climbs down off the ladder and says, well, so the good news is you haven't got termites, but just as bad, you got carpenter ants. And I said, well, Ray, what do we do? Is it safe? Do we need, he says, I'm a bug guy. I'm not an engineer. Call somebody else. So we called a guy named George Hartz. And some of you may remember George. He was a builder here in Lebanon for many, many years, built in the 50s and 60s what we realtors used to call brick box ranches. And you see them on either side of 48 up there. 3 bedrooms, bath and a half on a slab, single car, maybe double car garage, starter homes. But by this time, George was out of the home building business and doing nothing but remodeling. Great craftsman, had the best people working for him. And we called George. And George comes down, looks at the sawdust, gets up on the ladder, pries the boards back, looking around, climbs down off the ladder and looks at Jack Reynolds, my boss, and he says, whole thing's got to come down, got to be replaced. We about fainted. That balcony had been up since 1936. And we said, well, George, can't you just repair? Could you just? And I remember to this day what he said. He looked at Jack Reynolds and he said, I wouldn't want my mother standing up there. Well, boy, that's all it took. George got his crew together and they came down, disassembled the balcony from the top down, built it back up. Took them about 4 months to do it. I mean, a major project. And after they were done, there was the balcony. It was just like it did in 1936. We went back to running our hotel and restaurant, and George went back to remodeling. Didn't think any more about it. Until about 6 months later, and I picked up a copy of the Western Star. Remember the old Western Star? Came out on Wednesday's weekly newspaper, great little paper. And there on the front page of the Western Star was a picture of our builder, George Hartz, standing beside his new gazebo made from the pillars of the old Golden Lamb. And ladies and gentlemen, to the best of my knowledge, that gazebo is standing on Orchard Avenue to this day. Now, in deference to George, good guy, honest guy, and the pillars that he used for his gazebo were the pillars that went from the second floor to the third floor and not the ground floor. So maybe those weren't as bad. But I just thought it was so funny that those parts of that balcony, which were so bad, found a new life about 8 blocks away. One more thing to show you. This is an unusual piece. I'm trying to do some research on it and I hit a stone wall. This is a magic lantern slide from the early 1900s, prior to film. Historic hotel in operation since 1815, Lebanon, Ohio. Published by the Kansas City Public Schools, Kansas City, Missouri, Department of Visual Education. Now, why the Kansas City Department of Education decided they need to show a hotel in Lebanon, Ohio, I have no idea. I can only assume someone may have gone around and just taken stock photographs of various historic sites and then produced them and sold them, let your logo on them yourself. But I've never been able to figure out why they had it done. And I think there might be some clues on there, but I can't find anybody with a magic lantern to project it up on a screen. I want to spend just the last couple minutes talking about collecting, very briefly, because we're running a little late. When I was doing this initially 8 years ago, did the first one, I was showing the slides to someone, and she said, well, have you ever had the collection appraised? Any idea what you think it's worth? And I said, well, I can tell you what I think it's worth in the grand scheme of things. Not worth much of anything. And think about this. A lot of value is based on supply and demand, right? You have something and I want it, it's worth X amount of dollars. You have something and 20 people want it, it's worth more, right? Supply and demand. Well, I'll be honest with anybody and tell you that I don't get into fistfights or bidding wars with people when I find this stuff. Nobody collects it but me, as far as I know. I have never been outbid on eBay. I've never been outbid at a live auction. Nobody collects it but me. I mentioned early on that postcard from France that I found on the French website. Well, by the time I converted euros to dollars and paid to have it shipped over here, postcard cost $26. Now, in this day and age, $20 bill, not a big deal. But if you tell a dedicated postcard collector that you paid $26 for a postcard, they're going to faint. because postcards just aren't worth that much. I mean, printed by the thousands, distributed for years. I can take you on eBay right now and build you up a good collection of Golden Lamb postcards. Now, not pre-1900 stuff like I've got, but a good collection for $125 probably. And you can get some old stuff too. But I paid $26 for that postcard. And I was telling this to my son, to the same person I was showing the slides to. And she said, well, is the card really worth that much? And I said, yeah, it's worth that much to me. Because it's one I didn't have. It's unusual. Had a message on the back. So yeah, it's worth that much to me. And isn't that why you collect? I mean, certainly a lot of people collect for investment value. I'm going to buy it for $100 today. I'm going to sell it for $500 in 5 years. But I think for the most part, you collect because you admire something, or you appreciate it, or to have a whole set of something. You collect to keep, which is what I do. You collect things you admire. You collect things you love. And when I left the Golden Lamb in 2001, I had spent 63% of my life walking through the same front door every day, and I did build up a great love and a great appreciation, which I still have. So, that's why I keep trolling those websites every day, getting up on Saturday mornings, going to those auctions, hoping to find a magazine or a photograph or a piece of glassware that I don't have, and keep the collection going. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, the time is closed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Fred. You were talking about the conference room and the elaborate wallpaper. 85 years ago this May, the Warren County Historical Society was founded in that conference room. Yeah.
I remember.
Do any of you have any questions for Fred? Yeah.
Golden Lamb name came along somewhere between 1803 and 1812. And you know that in Hazel Phillips' book, she has a quote. And there's a guy who had come to Lebanon to see his father off to the war 1812 with the garrison. And in the book, Hazel said he quoted saying, oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay. He came back to Lebanon, and 3 years later, 4 years later, last time he was there was 1812. And he was looking up and down the street, and he said, in these short times, all has changed except the sign of the old Golden Lamb. So the hotel was founded in 1803. This guy was there in 1812, and it was called Golden Lamb then, so somewhere during that 9-year period. And of course, tavern signs, they served 3 functions. Number one, they got your attention. They were big and colorful. They fixed a location. You could tell an itinerant stagecoach driver leaving Cincinnati at 5 o'clock in the morning, which is when they left, look, here's on one road. You drive until you see the sign of the Golden Lamb, and that's where you stop. And supposedly it said something about the politics of the innkeeper. I mean, prior to the American Revolution, tavern signs were all English. Once the Revolution was over, tavern signs then became American. Why between 1803 and 1812 somebody chose the Golden Lamb? I have no idea. The only theory that's ever been floated is the fact that, according to the Hebrew Bible, that the devil can assume any physical shape except that of a lamb. So if you are staying under the sign of a lamb, you are going to be protected from whatever might befall you. But why somebody chose that, we have no idea. And as you heard me mention, Red Lion Tavern, Blue Ball Tavern, Green Tree Tavern. They're all big, colorful symbols. Why somebody, Black Horse, why somebody chose a lamb, I have no idea. And why was it gold? Well, chances are it wasn't gold, or probably yellow. But we'll never know. I don't think we'll ever know. We'll never know. Anyone else? Again, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Fred. Folks, thanks for being patient with us. I hope you enjoyed the meal and the talk. Don't forget the discount at the gift shop, 20% on items that are not on consignment, 10% on those which are on consignment. And hopefully we'll see you next month when we will once again be talking about collectibles. This time it'll be Valentine's Day. Okay, stay warm and we'll see you next month.